Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. In today's video, I will be discussing the United States women's national team versus the Netherlands in the quarterfinal match of the 2020 Olympic Games. This video will actually be in two parts. Part 1 will consist of the first half and the second half as well as formation, and the second part will consist of the extra time, the penalties, player analysis, and my final thoughts regarding our team's overall performance. So much happened in this game that I couldn't necessarily fit it into one video, and I wanted to go really in depth on my thoughts, so that's why I'm making this two parts. Once I get part 2 up, I will have it linked in the description down below, and I will do my best to get it out as quickly as I can. This video will discuss the following topics, such as the formation and lineup, the first half, which includes initial playing tactics, disallowed goals, scoring opportunities, both teams' goals, and formation changes. The second half will also discuss formation changes, defensive struggles, Netherlands' equalizer, the Netherlands' penalty, and other disallowed goals and other struggles that our team faced. And lastly, I will give my thoughts going into the extra time portion of this match. The timestamps for these topics will be in the description down below, so if you want to go check there, you can click around through the video. As always, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to start with the lineup first, as usual. We came out in our typical 4-3-3 formation with Alyssa Nair in goal, Carli O'Hara, Abby Dahlkemper, Becky Sauerbrunn, and Crystal Dunn on defense. In the midfield, we had Julie Ertz, Lindsay Horan, and Sam Mewis. And up top, we had Lynn Williams, Carli Lloyd, and Tobin Heath. Now, like I mentioned, we did come out in a 4-3-3, but there were many times throughout the game where we did switch formations depending on what we felt was necessary. We were also in a 4-1-3-2. We were in a 4-2-3-1. We were in a 4-1-4-1. We were kind of all over the place with that. I will point out at which times in the game we did make these shifts, but we did not stay in the 4-3-3 for most of the game. Based on this lineup, I was actually surprised that Lynn Williams was getting the start. She hasn't really had a lot of minutes in this tournament, and it's such an important game that I wasn't expecting Vlatko to start her. But she had a wonderful performance, and I'll get into that later. I think he did a great job of picking his initial lineup based on the players he had and who he had to rotate. And I think the players who were on the field in the first half did the job that they were supposed to do. The first half, we didn't necessarily come out bad, but we didn't also play very well. First 10 minutes, both teams are trying to establish a rhythm, and I'd say the first 10 minutes, it was pretty back and forth. It was messy from both sides. Neither team was able to establish a rhythm, but we did get plenty of chances in the first half that were actually substantial opportunities to score. I still felt like our tactics were off, though, because there were moments when our press, like I've mentioned in my last videos regarding the Olympics, it's been uneven. Tobin getting caught too far inside, the far side of our defense getting exposed. There were moments when we were being way too forceful, impatient, and I felt like I've kind of been able to put my finger on what's been bothering me, is we're ignoring our midfield and forcing the play to go direct every single time. We do all this hard work, and in this game particularly, we were playing more of a high press formation, not as high as we're used to seeing, but it was definitely more urgent, and when we'd win the ball back, we'd immediately try to launch it forward, and our players just simply weren't ready. And what I've noticed is we're completely foregoing the midfield to send these long balls in. And as I've mentioned in my videos in the past, it's really hard to establish momentum when you can't keep the ball and just generate some possession. My rule of thumb is to try to start with keeping 5 passes. Then once you get 5, try to do 5 passes again. And you've made your 10. Now try to connect a pass going forward. And once you can kind of start doing that over and over and over again, you generate momentum and you get a rhythm going. And we just weren't doing that in the midfield, because the second our midfielders like Horan or Mewis got it, they would look to go forward immediately, which isn't necessarily bad. There are moments in the game when you do have that chance to go forward, but when we're doing it every single time, it becomes predictable. We're honestly in that point hurting ourselves because we're not giving our players a chance to build the chemistry in that match. And so that's kind of why we would see Netherlands get back into the game, because we couldn't keep possession long enough, and the Netherlands are great at doing that. Tobin ended up scoring a first goal, but it was considered offsides. And this is one of the few chances that we had where Julie Ertz won the ball back, but instead of launching it immediately, she took a few touches and was like, okay, Tobin's open, I just need to split the defenders. And that's what she did. She played a great ball through. Tobin got it. She just was offsides, but her finish was perfect. But it was great to see that we were able to get that play going. But it was one of the first times in the matches where we had had a heads-up play. Instead of being forceful, we were smart about it. There were many formation changes throughout this game, so we kind of continued in the 4-3-3, but what would happen is Tobin would drop back into the midfield and Sam would fill her shoes. So it was the same formation, but two players were interchanging because Tobin wanted to be on the ball. And there were other moments when we switched to a 4-1-3-2 with JJ as the 6, Mewis, Horan, and Tobin as the 3 midfielders, and up top was just Carli and Lynn Williams. So they clearly in this match gave Tobin a lot of freedom to go where she needed to, and the other midfielders were expected to kind of shift depending on what she wanted. We had another major chance. Lindsay Horan had a fantastic header attempt, but Van Veenendaal is just one of those goalkeepers that is outstanding, and she made a fantastic save. She tapped it onto the goalpost and was able to smother it in the end before anybody could get to it. But it was a great team build-up. It was one of the, again, the first times in this match where we weren't being impatient. We were just letting the play develop. Carli got the ball, turned with it, played it wide to Lynn Williams, who played a fantastic cross into Horan. And honestly, Horan did a great job to even beat the defender and get her head on it. It was just unlucky that the goalkeeper made that great of a save. But it ended up coming back to bite us in the butt because we do all this work offensively, but we can't generate anything from it because the Netherlands ends up scoring their first goal. The thing with the Netherlands is you have a player like Vivian Miedema, and they only need one look. They only need one chance and they'll score. That's exactly what happened. They hadn't had any really threatening chances the entire first half up until they scored. Miedema was able to have plenty of time to check in and receive the ball. And now that's okay to receive it, but she wasn't necessarily able to turn. She did go sideways. She tried to find a shot, but realized there just wasn't anything on, so she played it wide to Van de Sanden, who was able to get to the end line and make her cross. And Crystal Dunn, throughout this tournament, and a major theme in this game particularly, just wasn't doing a good enough job cutting off the cross. You don't necessarily see that from Kelly, and I think at the end of the day, it's like we see them attack more down Crystal's side than the other side, and I think a lot of it is because Kelly does a good job at stepping and preventing the cross, and Crystal doesn't necessarily do that. And so this cross was able to be sent in due to the lack of pressure. Kelly tries to stab at it to clear it, but Miedema does a great job at using her body to just curl the ball and shield it. And she was on a half turn. The shot was taken in like a split second, and she places it absolutely perfectly in the bottom corner. Nothing Alyssa Nair could have done. It was so fast. It was like I blinked and suddenly the ball was in the back of the net. But Dahlkemper, who was marking her, didn't step it fast enough to try to deflect the shot or even challenge it. It was just so quickly done. And I think it's one of those things where it's like defensively 1v1, if we can't prevent Miedema from scoring, then we have to look to the cross. We have to prevent that from even coming in. And that's something we struggled to do this entire game with Miedema. After this goal though, we still had our issues because now we knew we needed to score. And so we were getting caught out of position a lot. Our press, again, is uneven. Our outside backs, Crystal Dunn and Kelly O'Hara, were getting caught really far forward because they were trying to get involved in the attack and they weren't doing a good enough job at tracking back. And so there were moments when Netherlands was able to generate some momentum going forward, but we were able to respond before the game could get out of our hands. It all started through Julie Ertz. Julie took a fantastic touch forward and realized that she could take on a few defenders through her touch in the middle. And she was able to draw in the defender and play a nice slip pass to Sam Mewis, who was just wide open. And she receives it, turns, looks up, finds Lynn Williams out wide and sprays it to her. And Lynn Williams takes her player on 1v1, wins the battle, gets a little lucky redirection, but she plays a perfect cross into Sam Mewis, who continued her run, got her head on it, and there was absolutely nothing Van Veenendaal could have done. And it was a great response from this team. But a few minutes later, we were able to score again, this time off of a corner. Tobin Heath sends a corner into the near post, and it provided a lot of issues for the Netherlands because one of our players, I don't recall who, went up to challenge the ball. So obviously the Netherlands has to challenge it, but they couldn't necessarily get their head on it or redirect it out of the box, so it went just straight up in the air. And Lynn Williams was anticipating this. She was the first one to win the second header, and Sam Mewis, having that great heads-up play and the awareness, wins the third header. It just comes back perfectly to Lynn Williams, who has a fantastic shot, a great half volley, places it so perfectly. Full credit to Lynn Williams for that fantastic strike and for the composure to get her laces over it and just to find the bottom corner. But going into the second half, we needed to stay with the same formation. Basically what I'm saying is we did not need to shift to 2 holding midfielders, and we needed to let Tobin continue to be free and do whatever she needed to do, but we had to stay on the front foot. We had to keep possession. I didn't necessarily love Jill Ellis, but one thing that she was fantastic at was closing out games and game management. And a great example would be in the World Cup. She wouldn't start parking the bus to like the 65th, 70th minute, which I even think is a little early. We were good enough at it that it was able to work. 45 minutes left in the game, plenty of time to get an equalizer. And so if we came out in the second half with 2 holding midfielders and played in low block, it would basically tell the Netherlands that we wanted to play to win with this lead, which is not substantial. My thoughts going into the second half is we just need to keep the ball, be smart, let the Netherlands come to us, play around them, tire them out, frustrate them, and then pick and choose when we decided to go forward. Stop with the silly long balls, stop with the forced passes, stop with the forced crosses to no one who's in the box. Just play simple and play smart, but unfortunately, we just didn't do that. The start of the second half, the United States did have some moments. We just immediately looked like we weren't having the same momentum we had in the first half. We were clearly going to sit and try to defend that lead, which again I think is so stupid because there's so much time left in the game, and why not use the best out of the players you have? Horan shifted back into this holding midfielder position alongside Julie Ertz. Our entire back line was sat at a lower block than it was in the first half, which welcomed the Netherlands to come attack us, which again makes no sense. Why not continue and try to find a third goal? If you get the third goal, then you can sit on that lead. And the Netherlands is one of those teams, like I said earlier, they only need one look and they will score. And that's exactly what happened. I had been saying we weren't doing a good enough job of preventing Vivian Miedema from getting the ball. That's something that we did really good against Sam Kerr. A smart defender wouldn't even allow them to get the ball in the first place. Because if you can win the pass, then your life's so much easier. And I think that's something the Netherlands did a really good job at. You would see players like Carli Lloyd and Alex Morgan just go flying to the ground trying to receive the ball. Because defensively, their center backs were so tight on them that they just didn't have time to receive the ball. And yeah, a few of them did result in fouls, but I would rather them be fouls than our team then be struggling to defend 1v1 against Vivian Miedema. And that's what happened is she was able to check in and receive the ball. Dahlkemper didn't stay with her tight enough. She was able to turn, tried to play a through pass to the runner, but Dahlkemper was able to deflect it. And the deflection was pretty unlucky for her because Miedema was able to take a touch around her and get her shot off. But again, Dahlkemper should have been tighter with her initially, and she should have done a better job defensively even after the deflected pass. The shot was taken, Julie Ertz couldn't step in time, and the precision and the placement was just so perfect, and there was just enough pace on it that Alyssa Nair just couldn't get to it. Do I think she should have saved it? Sure. But the game she ended up having, I think she makes up for the mistake. But at the end of the day, it's like we can prevent that. Like I said earlier, if we can't prevent Miedema from scoring, then we need to prevent her from even getting the ball. And that also starts with the midfield. Our midfielders have to make sure that the pass doesn't even come in. After that goal, it revitalized the Netherlands, and they realized that, we're kind of on the front foot now. We have the momentum, we have the possession. Like I've said many times before, you keep the ball long enough, you generate momentum and chemistry, and that's how teams start to dominate. But it's not like we didn't have our chances in the second half to score. Horan sent a great left-footed ball in behind the back line. She does these all the time, and they're just so perfect, but we just don't take advantage of it. That service is world class. The way she wraps her foot around it and gets it to curve just behind the defender so they can't make a play on it, but it's far enough away from the goalkeeper that she can't come out to smother it, and Carli gets on the end of it, but she takes such an awful first touch. Van Wiedendahl is able to come out and grab it, and it's one of those opportunities where it's like, that's onside, you have to score, or at least get a shot on target. Another thing I've noticed about the way we press is, if Tobin is caught too far inside and she can't get back wide enough, I assume this is a way to try to correct the tactical issues we found against Sweden. Press was getting caught way too far inside, and so Sweden would just switch the field and they would attack down the space that was left open. And I guess Vlatko's fix for that and his solution, instead of just not doing the overstepping in the first place, was to have a player like Lindsay Horan spray out wide to cover that space. But again, it still doesn't make sense. If Lindsay Horan can't make it in time and Tobin Heath is still trying to drop back, the space Lindsay just left is wide open. So if they play quickly enough, they can take advantage of that, which is something they were doing in the second half. It's like if Tobin leaves this space open, which she's clearly being instructed to do because both forwards are doing it regardless of who's on the field. If she can't make the recovery, they're sending Horan out to recover for her. That draws Horan out of her position, so now we have two players completely out of position, and we have space in the middle of the field to be occupied, and it's just stupid when you can just not overpress in the first place. Then Vlatko starts to make his subs, which I think in this tournament has been a huge area of controversy because of the way he's trying to rotate players' minutes. I don't necessarily think it's bad the way he's rotated their minutes. I think it's bad at the timing when he chooses to put players on. He took Lynn Williams off, who, any other time, I would probably suggest to take her off. But this was one of those games where she had 16 total minutes coming into this game. She has the freshest legs on the field out of any fucking player in the stadium, and you're going to take her off and puts Kristen Press on. And so I'd say just leave her on. She was doing fine. She wasn't doing bad, and the game didn't necessarily need Kristen Press. We could have waited till the 70th minute to put her on. It's one of those things where when we make so many changes to the team in such a short period of time, it completely disrupts any type of flow or momentum you had, even if it's not good, even if you're doing not necessarily good but not necessarily bad, and you make that many subs, it's going to have an effect on the players, because the players who are coming on have been on the sidelines the entire match. They have been warming up the best they can, yes, but there's no type of preparation that you can do to prepare yourself for a match that you haven't played in. But when you sub all 3 people at the same time or within a span of about 5 minutes, it throws off your team because they don't have enough time to build momentum. And if a team like Netherlands doesn't end up making any subs, which they only made 1, they have the advantage, because even though they don't have the freshness that we did, they had the cohesion that we lacked. And so I think it was, again, another tactical error that Vlatko made. I think he could have kept Tobin on longer. He could have kept Lynn on longer. And sure, sub Press on. Just do one at a time. Sub the drastic changes that he was making completely threw off our team. And another example of the way that it threw the team off is the way that our press was now structured. He puts Kristen Press on, he puts Alex Morgan on, and he puts Megan Rapinoe on. He puts Rose Lavelle on, and he's instructing them to press and high press harder than we have this entire tournament. Is if you have your front 3 that are completely fresh, pressing as hard as they can, that's great. But the midfield is not as fresh. You have Horan and Ertz, who have been playing the entire match, who have had an insane amount of minutes this tournament, and although Lavelle is, fresh legs as well, she's, holding herself back because you got to keep your position. And what happens is, if one line of pressure is way too hard and the next line doesn't come with, there's a gap in between them. And if you can break that first line of press, you're in. And that's what was happening. I think the best way I can explain it is waves. If you have this huge wave that just comes and crashes down, and the next one's super small, if you can withstand the first one, you can easily get over the second one. The Netherlands were doing a great job of breaking down our first line of pressure, and our midfield wasn't doing a good enough job of stepping up quick enough, because if they were up higher on the field, then we could have won the ball. But since our press was uneven and there was a gap between the midfield and the forwards, it was allowing the Netherlands to just go around our forwards and just completely play through us. Again, defeats the purpose of a high press, because now your front 3 who you've just put on are out of breath and they're not even getting any reward for their efforts. So it just simply doesn't make sense. At this point in the game, we switched to a 4-1-4-1 formation with Julie Ertz as the holding midfielder, Horan, Lavelle, Press, and Rapinoe as the midfield, and the single lone forward as Tobin in this specific example, but Alex then replaces her in a minute. But we did have chances. Lindsay Horan took a shot. It was a little wide. I couldn't tell if it was necessarily a shot or try to cross, or maybe she was just like, screw it, I'll try both. But Kristen Press gets on the end of it and scores. And it's so frustrating to me because Arlo White literally said in this match, the commentator, that VAR wasn't using parallel lines or line technology at all to determine the offsides. What is the fucking point then? Why use the technology and not actually use it? But I don't think Press was offsides. Now, again, I don't have the technology. I don't have the camera angle. I only have the angle that I took a screenshot from, and I'm going to draw some parallel lines. I'm going to do my best to make it look even. I say give the benefit of the doubt to the forward because it was so close. And I think in VAR, we're getting to the point to where even if you're equal, they're considering it offsides, and that's not how the rule works. When Rapinoe and Alex came on, I thought Alex was great. Rapinoe was just sluggish, looked out of shape, wasn't defending very well, was getting beat 1v1, allowing crosses to be sent in. Her passing was just subpar. I mean, come on. She was striking passes at players' shins, and it's the small things, like throw-ins. But she would throw it, and it would double bounce before making it to Roosevelt, and she would have to trap it. And it's like, it's just little things add up. Because the few seconds that it would have saved Roosevelt if she could have received it at her feet, that would have allowed her to maybe pass it back or then go somewhere. But now she has to focus on receiving the ball first and then dealing with it, that she doesn't have time before the defender's on her. And Rapinoe was sending in crosses that weren't on. She was forcing it. We still can't seem to figure out how to mark Miedema in 2 separate instances, and the penalty that ends up being conceded, which I'll talk about in a second. I think Tierna Davidson would have been a better option for Dahlkemper in this game, because at least Tierna stays really close to her defender. Dahlkemper gives her defender way too much space to operate, and it's one of those things where it's like, as a center back, you need to get really close to the forward, maybe put a little hand on their back. They'll swat you off, but the more you harass them, the more frustrated they're gonna get. And that's exactly what the Netherlands was doing to us. Carli Lloyd was getting sent to the ground, she was getting fouled, but the ref wasn't calling a lot of them. So if the ref's not going to call it, do the same thing to the Netherlands. Give them a taste of their own medicine, but we were giving Miedema way too much time and space to receive the ball. But there were moments in the match where there were 3 defenders marking Vivian Miedema. You had Julie Ertz, you had Becky Sauerbrunn, and Dahlkemper all on one player. That is outrageous. Not only is that stupid, but it creates a numerical disadvantage. If one player can't do it, fine, add 2, but 3, it creates too much confusion within your own team. Like, who's going to jump to receive the ball? Who's going to try to contest it? You don't know at that point. You can do your best to communicate. And then Netherlands ends up getting their penalty, which, Lord. Pino gets beat 1v1 on the flank. She just dives right in. The girl goes right around Pino and gets a great cross off. In this situation, Carli completely overcompensates and just flies into the situation and takes out the forward. Like, I have no idea what was going on in her head, because her decision to step that hard left Danielle Van de Donk on the far post, which is where the ball ended up going. But my only guess, and the reason I say this is because it happened again, and I'll discuss that in a minute, is my only guess is that Carli was concerned that Dahlkemper wouldn't actually challenge the ball, which, I mean, to be fair, I don't think she was going to. I mean, Carli would rather go try to defend that, leave her man open, than let Dahlkemper be alone 1v1, and that's a terrifying thought. Anyway, ends up being a penalty. That one's on Carli. As much as I shit on Dahlkemper, that's Carli's fault. And Lika Martin steps up to take a penalty, doesn't do a very good job at executing it. Alyssa Nair did her homework, knew she was going to go there, predicted it. She literally moved the direction before Lika Martins took the penalty, and she made a fantastic save to keep our team in the game. The last 10 minutes of the game had me so frustrated, because at this point, I never understand why coaches make such drastic changes. Just, if it's working, keep doing it. And we moved Horan and Ertz into the back line, and Kristen Press was sitting as a holding midfielder. What the fuck is that? It's outrageous. And there were even moments when, like, 3 people are on Miedema, right? Kelly's player's wide open, and then you're just giving the Netherlands the entire center of the field to just do whatever the hell they want with it. And that's what they did the last 10 minutes of the game. They just had chance after chance, and we were getting super lucky that they weren't able to convert them, because we were giving them so much time and space in the middle that they were getting shots off, they were sending balls in, and it's like, why? Why shift Horan and Ertz so far back? Keep them in the middle, keep Lavelle in the middle. We have to keep our shape. Our shape was completely gone. And because of that, we weren't able to do anything but weather the storm, and luckily we were able to make it to the end of the game without conceding another goal. We ended up finishing the game tied 2-2, and my thoughts going into overtime were that we just had to keep the ball. We just had to be smart with it. And I swear, I keep saying this tournament, I keep saying it about this team, but we just can't do it. It's simple. I feel like it's drilled into all these players to try to do something extra. There's no need to, okay? If you can get in the box, go for it. But I think at that moment, both teams were kind of under the impression that they might be going to penalties, and so just be smart with it. Don't allow Netherlands to have the ball. Keep possession, even if the possession's in our half, just back and forth between the center backs, that's fine, because the Netherlands then doesn't have it. It's just the small things. It's game management, but that's something that we're not good at right now. It's like under Jill Ellis, we were so good at game management. I don't know what's happening. That is all for part 1. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know the format is a little bit different, but I was able to rewatch it a few times, and I had a lot more thoughts than I did in my previous games, and plus there's a lot more to talk about in this game because we were all over the place. There was 30 extra minutes of play and penalties, and so there's a lot to discuss here. Let me know what you thought about the first 2 halves down below. Did you notice anything? Did you find any players special? Did you think any players underperformed? Like I said, I'm going to get part 2 out as quickly as I can, so stay tuned. In the meantime, subscribe so you don't miss the video, and I'll see you guys very soon. Bye.